to the second episode of Heading West, where we bring you to the frontier of capital markets and Web3. In today's episode, we have a very pleasurable guest. His name is Adam Miller, and he is the CEO and founder of MIDAO.
What's up? How's it going, Hunter?
Doing well, Adam. How are you?
Good, thank you. Awesome to be here.
Yeah, no, thank you again for making the time, Adam. I appreciate it. I'm sure the listeners are going to be very excited today as we're going to be focusing on DAOs. To kind of kick it off, I'd love to hear what kind of intrigued you about Web3 and crypto, and kind of when did you enter the space?
It actually started a long time ago for me. In 2012, I came across Bitcoin when I heard about the Silk Road. And in case anyone doesn't know, the Silk Road was this like black online black market and the dark web. And what intrigued me was how hard it was to find and transact on. Like first, there was like figuring out the dark web and finding the Silk Road, which was hard in and of itself. I mean, if you imagine they're hiding from police, right? Like, so how do they make it so that someone can find it, but the police can't find it? And then the second thing was once you were on it, you had to have this thing called Bitcoin to be able to transact on it. And so I had to figure out how to get Bitcoin at a time when there were no exchanges, right? There was nowhere you could use a bank account to get Bitcoin. You had to go in these
Definitely.
IRC chat rooms that were like hyper secure, like cryptographic. You had to prove that you really owned your username and that you were trustworthy, and then you'd send someone money to the other side of the world and they would send you Bitcoin back if you were lucky. And the systems that developed around that so that you could trust someone on the other side of the world were really interesting. So I got into it a little bit then, but then honestly, I kind of lost interest. I was like, okay, well, that's cool, but not much else there. And then it wasn't until like 2019, 2020, with everything happening with Ethereum and dApps and eventually NFTs coming online, that I really saw the light, and I realized, oh my God, like this is going to change everything. And so it was really just a couple of years ago that I really started going down the rabbit hole, and really devoting all my free time and then eventually all of my professional and free time to what's happening in crypto.
That's killer. No, that's a great story. It's so interesting, the Silk Road, and the OGs know about the Silk Road, and the people that do not. It's super interesting. I would suggest a good little Google dive. But
Hmm.
so kind of what intrigued you about the DAO space? Because I'm curious. There's a lot of different sectors within crypto. What kind of gravitated you toward the DAO space, and how has that been overall?
Yeah, for sure. So once I decided I was going to devote my life to crypto a couple of years ago, I made a plan that I was going to learn about every element of crypto, Web3, blockchain, everything. I took classes. I practiced like building some Solidity contracts. I learned some other languages. I played around with DeFi, with NFTs. I explored like everything there was to explore about Web3, networking, attended some events. So I learned everything. And my plan was to then decide where the best opportunity was for me. So after about a year of learning, researching, experimenting, etc., I decided that DAOs were both where the greatest opportunity was in crypto, in my view, but also DAOs were what best aligned with my interests as an individual, which are around the intersection of people, technology, and business. I mean, I've always been so passionate about those three things, but aside from just tech entrepreneurship in general, which is what I've generally always done, I had never found something that so meaningfully combined those three things into one endeavor that required you to understand all three of those things and be able to work at the intersection of them. So again, it's people, technology, and business. And so that's what I found in DAOs. And so that's why I decided, and I would list like, here are all the things happening in Web3 and crypto, and then decide like, okay, which one do I want to go into? And the answer was DAOs.
No, that's incredible. That's a great way to kind of find what sector to dive into for anyone listening. And then how would you kind of describe MIDAO for anyone listening at a very, basic generic level?
Yeah, sounds good. So my company, MIDAO, it's MIDAO .org, if anyone wants to find it. The story actually starts several months ago. At the time, I was doing DAO consulting, so helping people launch and operate DAOs. And one of the DAOs that I was helping was a friend of mine's DAO for a company called Clipper Exchange. Well, I shouldn't say a company; it's a protocol called Clipper Exchange, which is the best DEX for trades under $50,000. And they wanted to give their DEX to the community through a DAO. And they looked around, and I looked around with them, and we saw that there were no legal entity options that made sense. So, like, it just, to us, it seemed obvious. You start a DAO, you're going to want to form some kind of like LLC or corporation or something, so that, I mean, that's what any startup company would do, right? It's one of the first things you do when you're
Definitely.
starting a company is you say, like, what state should we choose? What country? What type of legal entity? And there were none out there for DAOs. And we had some relationships in the Marshall Islands, which is a country in the South Pacific that is very closely allied and partnered with the United States, but is a sovereign nation. We had relationships there from working on the Solve cryptocurrency project back in 2017, which didn't end up getting off the ground. But through that experience, we learned that the Marshall Islands is one of the most popular places for shipping companies to register. So they had become this
Interesting.
hub of like a certain type of company registering their legal entities. And we thought, maybe they'd be interested in adding another type of company to the list and also becoming the premier home in the world for DAOs to create their legal entities. So that began a series of conversations that culminated with the passing of a law earlier this year that created a new type of LLC, a limited liability company that's made for DAOs, so that DAOs don't have to make the compromises they would normally have to make if they were forming like a C corporation or an LLC in Delaware or a Swiss foundation or a Cayman Islands or BVI a corporation or foundation. This new law really allows DAOs to be DAOs and to form a legal entity. Um, MIDAO was created as the registered agent for DAOs that want to create, or people that want to create these DAO LLCs in the Marshall Islands. So we are the company that can set up these LLCs for DAOs.
No, that's truly incredible. I love it, the company, because you guys definitely are. I mean, I haven't come across anyone else tackling the legal aspect in the DAO space like you guys have been. So it's truly incredible to see. And anyone that's looking, to start a DAO, definitely would recommend going to MyDAO.org and getting in touch with Adam and his team. And then I'm also curious too, Adam, in regards to like the legal and compliance aspect, did you kind of come from a legal background, or was that just a gap in the market that you guys kind of wanted to tackle, or kind of what was the thinking behind that aspect?
It's a great question. I'm not a lawyer. I don't come from a legal background. I really come from a tech entrepreneurship background. One of our co-founders is a prominent lawyer. So he's come up through the ranks of like huge financial services companies like BlackRock. He was their head of compliance for one of their lines of business, and so we partnered with him in creating this business. And then as we've gone along the journey, we've brought more lawyers onto the team. So it's a very lawyer heavy, legal heavy business. And we're actually always looking for more lawyers that are really interested in DAOs and Web3, whether that's so that we can make referrals to them when our clients are interested in actual legal advice, or even to bring onto our team in some capacity, because there's no shortage of legal related needs associated with running this business.
No, super interesting. That's awesome. BlackRock. There we go. That's definitely a solid name to have people on the team. And then for anyone listening, Adam is building, so it's definitely important to see someone building and a company building in kind of the bear market that we are in. So there
Yeah.
we go. So I was curious also, where do you kind of see the Dow market going over the years, and how do you see it integrating kind of in, like, I would say Web 2, more of like real world, and how do you see it integrating over the years in Web 3?
Yeah, well, and so, also to your prior question about kind of what, like, why am I doing this, right? If I'm not a
Yeah,
lawyer, and the answer kind of flows into the answer to this
it's interesting.
question. Um, yeah, so my perception several months ago of what challenges DAOs were facing was that there were really, and there still are, three major challenges that most DAOs seem to face. One is technology. Two is organizational or management. Three is legal. And if we look first at the technology challenge, that has to do with what tools are available that actually make it possible to run and operate a DAO. Because DAOs, and we haven't really talked about what a DAO is, but let's say a DAO is, as simply as possible, is an organization that uses the blockchain for some of its governance and membership tracking rather than doing those things on paper. Right. And there's a whole spectrum, in terms of how, to what
Hmm.
extent DAOs are doing that. And there's even other ways of thinking about definitions. But let's look at it that way for a second. And, to be able to do that, you need, of course, there to be capable blockchains and scaling solutions, in the sense that those blockchains have to be highly performant and relatively inexpensive. And so it's only been the last year or two that we went from, maybe just Ethereum, and Ethereum being very expensive and kind of slow, to both Ethereum getting much faster and cheaper, and also now scaling through layer two scaling solutions, and of course other blockchains coming onto the market as well, launching smart contract functionality, fairly recently in a lot of cases for these other blockchains. So I would say, like, the protocol layer, the blockchain layer is ready. Right? These blockchains are capable, they're scalable, they're not too expensive, they're ready for DAOs to be DAOs. The next layer
Hmm.
above that is the smart contracts. So, like, the backend infrastructure that makes it possible for a DAO to do all the things it needs to do in terms of governance and membership tracking. So, being able to decide who a member is and distribute or buy and sell those membership rights or those governance rights through something like utility tokens, and then the ability for the DAOs to have votes about different things, or otherwise make decisions however they want to make decisions, and then have those decisions be executed in some way in terms of actions that are taken on the blockchain. And that layer is, I would say, about half ready. And when I say half ready, what I mean is there are really good solutions out there for running a DAO, but they're all very opinionated. And what I mean by that is that they've had to make some very specific decisions about how a DAO should run. So, like, if you're building those smart contracts, you have to decide while you're building it, does a DAO work by some kind of like ERC20 token that represents membership and ownership rights? And is it one token, one vote, or is it one member, one vote, one wallet, one vote? And when you do a vote, what's the quorum, and what's the how long are those proposals out for, and how do those proposals interact with each other, right? And what actions can they take? So across the whole spectrum of like DAO capabilities, these tools have had to decide how a DAO should work so that they can build a tool. And so the fact is, if you're a DAO and you look out there on the market, there are maybe 10 options right now for how a DAO can function. And there's not nearly enough for like the full spectrum of how people like to run organizations. And so you have to choose one of these very opinionated platforms, and there may not be one that's a good fit for you. Where we need to go with tooling is we need to go to a place where either there are way more opinionated options available, or there are instead highly configurable, flexible tools available so that you can use their tool and then run your DAO however you want. So, anyways, that's technology, and maybe I went into a little bit too much detail there, but um,
No, it was great. It was great. I think it was super good for the audience and even
good.
myself on that aspect. I'm curious too if you can kind of share your own description of like what a DAO is. I think that should be important. Should have touched on that maybe a little bit earlier, but for the audience.
Yeah, that sounds good. So I do think that a technical definition of a DAO is an organization whose governing rules and membership can be tracked on the blockchain in smart contracts and with tokens instead of in written documents. And a key word there is that you can use the blockchain. And the reason that's a key word is if you look at the full spectrum of DAOs out there today, when it comes to both of those things, governance and membership tracking, DAOs are using the blockchain to varying degrees. Some DAOs really right now are just a Discord server with a community of people that's working on something together. And maybe they do voting in Discord with emojis, right? And that's fine.
Hmm.
There's really, especially at the early stages, that's like, the traditional startup, three people in a garage working on something together. Now you've got startup DAOs that are like 20 people spread out around the world in a Discord working on something together. Like that's the DAO startup. And there's no reason to try to be extremely technical and complex about your governance and membership tracking when you're just 20 people in a Discord server. So that's a DAO too, if they think of themselves as a DAO. And a lot of them say they're on the path to decentralization. And I think that's a valid thing for a DAO to say, is that they're moving towards really doing everything, on the blockchain with smart contracts, et cetera. Um, So that's how I would define a DAO.
No, that's a great definition. And I'm curious too, kind of going back to a few points that you spoke on. In regards to, different layer ones and networks, what do you see as the most viable network to kind of build like a DAO on and your community on currently with the market, with what's out?
So there is almost certainly not a lot of DAO tooling available anywhere except for Ethereum and Ethereum compatible chains. So that means
Got
like
it.
Ethereum itself, scaling solutions, whether that's side chains like Polygon, a proof of stake, or whether that's coming soon, things like Optimism. Um, and there are other chains that I've seen some of these DAO tools also make their tool available on, like Gnosis chain or Arbitrum. And these are also, I believe, Ethereum compatible chains, which means they don't have to modify their software a lot for them to work. So if you're in the
Hmm.
Ethereum ecosystem, there are probably 10 or 15 good like DAO platforms that really allow you to run your DAO on their smart contracts and their interfaces. But then if you go to something like Solana, there's like one DAO tool. And again, it has to be
Interesting.
very
That's what I was curious
opinionated
about.
because right now, yeah, it's too hard to build something, really configurable. It just hasn't been enough time and funding yet. Cardano, there's none. Um, and I think it's a similar story across most chains outside of Ethereum.
Got it. No, that's super insightful, Adam. I appreciate it. And then let's just say I was incorporating a DAO or starting my own, or for anyone listening that is or is in the process, when would be the right time to kind of approach my DAO and kind of get everything incorporated? Is that in the beginning, kind of in the midst of the process?
Yeah, so there are good reasons why a DAO should incorporate sooner rather than later. Whatever solution you choose, that's right for your DAO. And there's a couple reasons for that. The first is you want to have limited liability from the start. So, limited liability is one of the main reasons why DAOs should incorporate. Without limited liability, which you get from forming a legal business entity, the members of the DAO can be held liable for the actions of the other people in the DAO and the organization itself. So there are already DAOs where the people who are members of the DAO are being sued for something that happened with the DAO for millions of dollars. And if you look at the traditional business world, that you never sue the employees of a company for what you don't even sue the managers or the CEO.
Hmm.
You sue the company, and that's because they have a legal entity. That's what you have to do. So, anyways, limited liability is something DAOs need, and you want that from the start. If you're going to do a token drop, if you're going to raise money, if you're going to, start conducting business in some way, you want that liability shield from the beginning, not after you've already started doing things that might put you at risk. The second reason is there are tax implications when you create an entity that already has assets. So let's say you're part of a DAO and that DAO is going to do some kind of NFT drop or token drop to raise $1 million in ETH. And let's say you don't have a legal entity yet, and you do that token drop, you raise $1 million. A year goes by, ETH goes up to, let's say it 10x's, and now you have $10 million worth of ETH in the bank, and now you create your legal entity. Most tax jurisdictions, including the United States with the IRS, will treat that as if at the time you create the legal entity, the people of the DAO are giving that money to the legal entity at that time. And when you give $10 million
Interesting.
dollars that started out as $1 million, you're responsible for capital gains taxes on that $10 million. Even though
That's not
you
fun.
felt like the DAO was already around a year ago and the DAO raised money, not you, but that's not how it's seen from a tax perspective. So you should
Hmm.
definitely form your legal entity if you can before you start, raising money in any way for tax reasons.
No, that's great. And definitely for anyone listening, always go the compliance route. It's always safer, helps you sleep better at night. And then I'm curious too, Adam, kind of how do you see the market shifting between DAOs and NFTs? Because I know that they're kind of becoming more integrated. And do you see that, kind of helping the DAO environment and space? Just because I feel like currently the NFT market is quite a bit bigger than the DAO space right now. And do you see that kind of bringing some solid exposure over to the DAO environment?
Yeah, one of the really interesting thing about NFTs is that they can be used as the way of tracking who is a member of a DAO. And so
Hmm.
anytime you have a situation where, let's say there are 10,000 people all each holding one PFP or profile picture style NFT or whatever the NFT project is. Um, and then let's say it's a really cool project, it's really exciting. 6 months go by, and the people in that community, maybe they were already in a Discord together, right, chatting about the NFT and why they love it and why they love each other or whatever it is. Um, and then those people want to organize themselves, and they want to maybe have some shared like treasury they can control or make some decisions together. It's very, very easy for them to start a DAO for that NFT project and do whatever they want with that DAO. So what NFT projects should think about from the start is, well, if we're basically creating the infrastructure for people to very easily start a DAO around this project, maybe we should start the DAO now instead of waiting for the community to start the DAO themselves. Um, it's kind of like what happened with OpenSea, which is one of the leading NFT marketplaces. People were encouraging them for a long time. Hey, why don't you guys start a DAO? Why don't you start a DAO? Give the community more power. Give the community a voice. You guys act like such a Web2 company. All this stuff, and they didn't do it. So LooksRare came along and said, you know what? We're going to do an airdrop. Everyone who's ever used OpenSea a meaningful
I
amount
remember
before,
this.
we're going to give them LooksRare tokens, and then all of those token holders are part of the LooksRare DAO, and we're going to go create a competitive NFT marketplace together. And they called it a vampire attack, because you're kind of like taking advantage of the fact that all this information is public. So, I mean, that's the first thing. Is that, I mean, NFT projects, it makes sense to have a DAO because you have a community of people, they have a shared interest. Maybe they're going to want to do
It
something
does.
together. But also, if you don't do it for them, it's very easy for them to do it themselves later. So absolutely, like DAOs are big for NFT projects. I think they'll be even bigger in the long run. Um, and that's probably the main way that NFTs and DAOs interact, is that any NFT project can easily have a DAO. Maybe the other thing is that, I mean, NFTs can also be not related to art or any other like project. NFTs can simply represent membership or ownership in a DAO,
Yeah.
right? So like
Hmm.
I could create a DAO. It's like the Hunter Adam podcast DAO, right? And I can
There we
create
go.
yeah, I can create 1,000 NFTs or 10,000 or maybe an unlimited number of
Hmm.
NFTs. And basically it's one NFT, one vote, right? So we can give, maybe we each get 10 and all the listeners get one and whatever else.
Hmm.
That's all that NFT does, is it represents membership in our DAO. Maybe it gives the holders some right to like future like advertising fees. Maybe not. That's up to us. But I think a lot of people think of DAOs as always being controlled by fungible tokens. So there's like normal ERC20s where there's 10 million tokens, and however many you have is how many votes you get. But NFTs actually can be more effective, because often in organizations you don't necessarily think of governance as something that's like tradable. It's something that you want to give out very carefully. And maybe most people get one NFT because you want one person, one vote. And maybe there's a
Hmm.
situation where you want someone to have twice as much power or 10 times as much power, as opposed to just a purely fungible amount of power.
No, it's so true. It's very interesting how the space is evolving, and a great example with the Looks Rare. Actually, love Looks. Used to be on OpenSea, now on Looks too. Plus, it's great how you can actually post your NFTs on their homepage. I mean, you have to have a decent collection, but you get paid in Looks and
Mm-hmm.
ERC20 wrapped ETH, I believe too, which is truly great, truly incredible to make money from posting your NFT. But this video has been awesome, Adam. I appreciate you coming on to Heading West. For anyone listening, I definitely want you guys to head over to MIDAO, check them out. They're doing some incredible things in this space. And also, Adam, if you'd like to plug yourself with your new podcast, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So search for Just DAO It. That's the new podcast for people starting DAOs. We really go deep into advice from people who have started DAOs before, people who are leaders or major contributors in DAOs. What are some of the common pitfalls they ran into, challenges they face, advice for people starting DAOs. And we also cover all the DAO news each week. So yeah, check it out. It's Just DAO It on any major podcast platform.
There we go, everyone. Head over there, check it out. Once again, thanks for tuning in to the second video of Heading West. We will see you guys in the next one.